All right. Bungie is doing a massive sandbox overhaul. We have buffs coming to rocket launchers, particularly the precision and high impact frames. Heavy grenade launchers getting buffed. Caster frame swords getting buffed. The Edge of Action exotic glaive, X-Darius, and the Vex Mythoclast all getting buffed, and some nerfs and adjustments to some OP things in PvP. Let's jump right into it because this is a massive 6,000 word TWAB. Here we go. Let's talk about sandbox updates. Update 7.3.5 arrives on March 5th, and it includes changes across weapons and abilities, as well as some Crucible specific tuning. This is intended to set up the sandbox for success in the new PvP landscape, as well as the new content coming with Destiny 2 Into the Light in April. Very interesting how it's to set up for content with Into the Light. I wonder what they mean by that. We don't know anything about that yet, about the Into the Light event. Let's first dig into abilities. Take it away, combat gameplay team. All right, abilities sandbox. Hey folks, combat gameplay here with a quick update. This is a lightweight one for us. We are heads down in the final shape. We have a few changes coming we wanted to share. A quick rundown, update 7.3.5. A reduction in uptime for Threaded Spectre, so RIP to the Strand Hunters out there that are ruling the Crucible right now. A few changes to Threadlings to make them easier to deal with in Crucible, interesting. A fix for the Restoration Timer extension issue with a few corresponding changes to relevant solar fragments. A small number of ability buffs that we're pulling forward from our balance pass in the final shape. Got it. Threaded Spectre is currently overperforming in high-level PvP activities, particularly in Trials of Osiris. We believe there are two core issues that drive this overperformance. Let's talk about each separately. First, uptime on Threaded Spectre is significantly higher than we think is healthy, particularly with the fast cooldown on the Hunter's Dodge, combined with the 2 Threadling grenade charges granted by Widow's Silk. For update 7.3.5, we're implementing a change that applies the same class ability regeneration penalty that Ensnaring Slam uses when the player creates a Threaded Spectre. Got it. We don't want the change to have a significant negative impact on Threaded Spectre's performance in PvE, so we're reducing the duration of that generation penalty by 50% in PvE activities, which will also apply to Ensnaring Slam, increases uptime PvE. Got it. So balancing the two sandbox separately, as you can see there a little bit. In addition, we're increasing the Threaded Spectre's detonation damage, first PvE combatants by 25%, with the goal that while you may be able to create fewer shadow clones overall, each one will be more impactful to compensate. There you go. Ensnaring Slam, we've got reduced class ability regeneration penalty, duration by 50%. Threaded Spectre now applies the same class ability and regeneration penalty used by Ensnaring Slam when the player creates a Threaded Spectre. There it is, and they increase it by 25%. Got it. Threadlings now, this is a good one. The other half of Threaded Spectre's PvP potency comes from Threadlings themselves, like Axiom Bolt projectiles. Prior to update 4.0.1, we believe that Threadlings are currently too difficult to clear off the battlefield. To address this, we're implementing a change to make them easier to shoot and reduce instances where it feels like your bullet went straight through a Threadling without detonating. In addition to their potency as a distraction tool, Threadlings deal enough chip damage to players to significantly change the outcome of an engagement, so we're slightly reducing their damage versus players. Finally, we've identified a bug where groups of Threadlings were not chain detonating as intended when one is destroyed, which is being fixed. So there you go. That chain detonation will be really nice. You shoot one of them, it kind of blows up the other ones, and making the hit detection on them be a little bit better. This is actually excellent. So they increase the aim assist shape size from 0.4 to 0.5, reduce the base damage from 40 to 35, damage with Thread of Evolution equipped one goes from 45 to 38.5, and fixed an issue where groups of Threadlings were not reliably chain detonating. Very nice. Good changes there. Overall, I think that the Threadling meta that's been ruling PvP for a little bit, it's time to switch things up a little bit. If you haven't played PvP, I jumped in just recently and there's just Threadlings everywhere. Realize these changes are not localized to Threadrunner and will also affect Broodweaver potency and Crucible. To compensate for this, we're pulling some other buffs forward that we originally planned to ship in the final shape to keep the power of their overall kit roughly the same place. With update 7.3.5, we'll be increasing Arcane Needle's aim assist and tracking strength, making it significantly more consistent to close to mid-range fast-moving targets. Got it. Very interesting. So a big buff to Arcane Needle, increasing the aim assist angle, aim assist fall-off, angular velocity, increase the length projectile shape, fixing short uncharged melee. Very cool. Excellent. And then we've got Restoration and Radiant updates. Very interesting. Update 7.3.5 will also bring an update to Restoration and Radiant keyword buffs. which currently have a number of buggy interactions with timer extensions, most notably Ember of Empyrean Fragment. In combination with Ember of Mercy, we've rebuilt a significant portion of these keyword buffs to store their timer data more safely. Restoration and Radiant, fixed issue where the maximum duration of Restoration and Radiant buffs were being incorrectly stored, resulting in their buff timers resetting their initial duration instead of their maximum when the buff was reapplied. This also resolves similar issues with shorter restoration sources like sunspots with the Sol Invictus aspect. Very nice, that's a good change. Alongside these changes, we're adjusting both the Ember of Empyrean and Ember of Mercy fragments, left unchanged with the dramatically increased consistency resulting from this bug fix. These two fragments would vastly exceed our power bar. We believe that even with these changes, the experience of using each of these fragments is better than the experience in the game right now. Got it. Ember of Mercy now extends your current restoration duration by 2 seconds when a fire sprite is collected. And then we've got the restoration extension is increased to 3 seconds while Ember of Solace is equipped. Okay. And then we have Ember of Empyrean increased the maximum duration extension from 12 seconds to 15 seconds and reworked the duration extension granted with each solar defeat. Previously, it was always a 4-second duration extension, regardless of the time of the target defeated. Now the duration extends varies based on the strength of the target defeated, whether it's a red bar or major, will result in less time added in the game currently. So there you go. Some adjustments to solar stuff we needed to fix, and they're doing a rework basically to Restoration and Radiant. We'll have to see how it feels in game after it goes live. Sounds like it's going to be good changes overall though. Solar ability buffs. Let's stick with solar for a bit. In combination with the Arcane Needle improvements detailed above, we have a small number of solar ability buffs that were originally slated for a balance update coming with the final shape. We are now confident enough to move those buffs up to this release in conjunction with the Solar Aligned Seasonal Artifact. For our Sunbreakers, we're improving the consistency of Consecration, making it better to catch floating targets or enemies that jump too late. We're also increasing the travel distance of both Scorch and Ignition Wave and further increasing the Ignition Wave's travel speed. Nice. So some Consecration buffs. Travel distance from 18 to 20 meters, the height of the slam by 1 meter, increase the travel distance from 16 to 20 meters, and the travel speed as well. Very nice, from 16 to 24 meters per second. There we go. I haven't used that in quite a while, but should be pretty interesting. We've also heard some consistent feedback about Gunpowder Gamble's self-damage in untimely misadventures, so reducing it to make it less risky. So its self-damage goes from 144 to 80. So that's everything for the updates. Some good stuff there, but let's jump into the real spicy, meaty stuff here. We've got Weapons Sandbox. We want to know what's getting buffed and how much is it getting buffed, right? Especially curious about that Vex Mythoclast buff. That sounds like it could be crazy because it's already very good in the game. Each release, we make changes to weapon archetypes, exotic weapons, perks, and more, intended to improve the balance of the game and introduce some variety. In this release, we have some small adjustments to PvP tuning, and one specific in the Crucible Sandbox section. Hefty PvE changes to rocket launchers, drum, grenade launchers, caster swords, etc. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Weapon archetypes. When we created the new heavy burst hand cannon subfamily, Warden's Law, we inadvertently included some content that made them harder to control with a mouse and keyboard. So we've got heavy burst hand cannons. Correct an issue that was causing heavy burst hand cannons to have 25% less aim assist than other hand cannons when hip firing or airborne on mouse and keyboard. Bows continue to be hard for some players to counter in PvP. I'm not too excited about that. I mean, I still don't see myself using the hand cannon too much, but we'll see with like Warden's Law. Maybe after the change it'll be a little bit better, but it's always been strong, be easier to use, making the projectiles fully hit scan for bows, right, at longer distances. And we're keeping that change, but we're adjusting some aim assist data to require more skill at extended range for bows. Interesting. Reduce the auto aim fall off distance, start and end by 15%. Aim assist will be less effective at long range. Reduce the maximum auto aim cone by 5%. So bows will have a little bit less aim assist to make them a little more skillful. Very interesting. We ship Breakneck with 1 fewer perk than intended in the right column. Oops. Auto rifles added the missing 12th perk target lock to Breakneck's second column trait. Very interesting. Okay. So Breakneck is going to have target lock on it as well. Very cool. We'll have to see what perk combinations we can get with that. Following that information, we'll see what we can get on the left and right hand column. That could be a really cool god roll. Breakneck might very much be on the menu now. Lightweight scout rifles have always had a following, but they've suffered from being unforgiving when missing crits. We're making a change that reduces the proportion of crits required for optimal time to kill from 4 crits to 3 crits plus 1 body. Interesting. Lightweight scout rifles increase base damage. Well, there you go. Buff to lightweight scout rifles. Despite being less popular than some other special weapons in PvP, sniper rifles are disproportionately oppressive to play against, particularly in 3v3 game modes. We're making it harder to use by nerfing aim assist a little bit. Sniper rifles reduce the auto aim cone size by 10%. Sniper rifle aim assist nerfed? What? Who is this Bungie doing this? This is insane. The rocket launcher meta has become more set than we'd like, with adaptive and aggressive subfamilies outperforming the rest. We're making some changes to precision and high impact subfamilies to give them more reserve ammo than others and give them some unique strength. Interesting. So rocket launcher is precision, increase reserve ammo by 2 and reduce damage penalty from -10% to -5%. So if you don't know, right now you have all these different rocket frames, and certain frames do less damage than others. I believe adaptive is like the best frame overall, does the most damage. But now, to compensate for precision frame having tracking, it will also have 2 more in reserves than the adaptive frames, and will do only a -5% penalty, which is actually a really nice change right there. And then high impact increased the reserve ammo by 2, now deals more detonation damage and less impact for roughly the same total damage. This should make them more effective versus groups when getting splash damage on a target with a near miss. The above changes also affect Deathbringer, Galhorn, and Truth. Very good to know. Keep that in mind. Some interesting changes to rockets. Now we've got heavy grenade launchers getting some changes here, and they have touched them a few times lately. While they're fairly strong mathematically, it hasn't moved the needle. It's time to make some more substantial changes. My gosh, I'm having a brain aneurysm there. Note this change is not a nerf to overall grenade launcher damage output, as we've increased impact and detonation damage to compensate dramatically increased reserve ammunition. All right, here we go. Heavy grenade launchers, we've got increased reserve ammo by a minimum of 6 rounds, maximum of 10 rounds, depending on the grenade launcher, and reduced spike grenades impact damage buff from 50% to 12.5%. With the below changes, this reduces the total spike grenades damage buff from 8% to 3%, making them less mandatory. Wow. Increased direct hit impact damage by 10% combined with the above change. This brings non-spike grenade launchers almost up to the level of spike grenade launchers, and very slightly reduces damage output with a spike grenade launcher. Increased detonation damage by 5%. In PvP, this is offset by a reduction to detonation damage for no overall change. Very interesting. I have to see what these changes feel like with the heavy grenade launchers. If they're trying to say it, the way they're tuned is it shouldn't be a nerf, but seems interesting. Feels like a nerf. Waveframe heavy grenade launchers have struggled to find an identity with not enough ammo to really work or ad clear, as stressed above, and not as much single target damage as standard grenade launchers. With these changes, they'll be able to compete with other grenade launchers, and it will be easier to land damage. Waveframe heavy grenade launcher increased damage by 20%, increase wave width by 40%. There we go. So the heavy waveframe GLs getting a nice buff there. Definitely well deserved for that. Caster swords definitely need a buff right here. So we've got reduced heavy attack energy cost from 5 to 4, and increased heavy attack damage by 16%. That is a nice substantial buff. I don't know if that will make them a meta option. We'll have to see if we can go kill Crota with a caster frame sword. Next up, we have exotics. Vigilant Swing is strong in PvP already. It's hard to control with the 5 rounds. So we got Vigilant Swing now has deterministic recoil patterns. So keep that in mind. So you'll be able to follow the exact pattern. If it goes up and to the left or up and to the right, you'll be able to pull your mouse or your thumbstick to make that Vigilant Swing have a really nice, clean, consistent burst when firing it. Very good. Vex Mythoclast, okay, is getting a buff, and it's going to do increased ADS damage fall off scalar from 1.5 times to 1.7 times. Very interesting. So it fires like a high impact auto rifle, so they're matching it to that. Makes sense. Then we have Wishender's True Sight is a big part of its exotic identity, so we wanted to retain that both in its current form. Okay, Wishender True Sight will now deactivate if you leave ADS or hold it for longer than 3 seconds. To reactivate, you must fully redraw the bow. So they're adjusting Wishender a little bit, especially when people rocking those Oathkeepers. And then we have Edge of Action, which is the Titan exotic glaive, the one that makes the little baby bubble there. And There's more room to make it more durable in PvE, okay? Increased its damage resistance in PvE against all combatants except bosses to 85%, and increased its damage resistance against bosses 15%. Nice. I'm gonna go start using that glaive maybe a little bit more. Manticore, okay, it has a unique airborne playstyle. Still has no one's ever really... I never really got into Manticore. I was like, this is okay, but not really my thing. We'll see what they're gonna do here. Players must now be airborne for 0.5 seconds and deal damage with the weapon to activate the perk. We gave it a special reload to quickly disengage anti-gravity thrusters. Tarbot also receives the special reload animation. While anti-grav thrusters are engaged, combatants will be less accurate when targeting the player, similar to Always on Time. And with the Catalyst, final blows and sustained damage with Manticore while airborne grant a void overshield and return ammo to the magazine. Okay, so some decent buffs to Manticore. Very cool. Then we have the X-Darius. This is this art grenade launcher that's like a Boomer Knight fantasy, right? You can just spam this thing endlessly. We'll see what happens here. X-Darius says increased impact damage in PvE by 50%. That's definitely well deserved because it's so unbelievably weak. And detonation damage is unaffected. So the total damage works out to be around 20%. And increase the maximum rate of fire by 17%. Nice. That's a good change to X-Darius. That thing was very cool, but so weak that no one was really using it. Maybe we'll actually use it a little bit now. Perks, Heal Clip now grants Cure ×2 to the player while still granting Cure ×1 to nearby allies. Love that. Trench Barrel can now be activated by dealing damage with ranged melee attacks. That's actually very cool. And Barrel Constrictor. This is a perk that you actually find on the Swordbreaker from Crota's End. And once activated, it no longer deactivates upon firing a shot. It lasts for 7.5 seconds, and it buffs all shots fired during this time. Enhanced Barrel Constrictor lasts for 8.5 seconds. So if you don't know how this perk works, it actually tightens the barrel spread. So it sounds like it would be a really strong perk for shotguns. And with this buff to it, this could actually be a meta-changing perk for PvP. Bungie might be trying to push us to actually use Barrel Constrictor on shotguns. So I have to give Swordbreaker with maybe Enhanced Barrel Constrictor a try here. Loose Change. We've got applying a subclass 3.0 debuff now grants plus 20 aim assist and 20% reduced ADS movement speed penalty in addition to the existing plus 50 reload stat. Applying another debuff now refreshes the duration too. Got it. So this perk Loose Change getting a nice buff. Much needed. Dual Loader removed the reload speed penalty. Very interesting. And changed the wording of the perk description to make it clear that it increases the number of shots reloaded. So we can now apply it to other weapon types without confusion in the future. Perfect. All right, and then we have text balance stock. Okay, this is going to be the text mechanical origin trait getting a buff because it wasn't really landing the hipfire fantasy of the Foundry. All right, it now grants plus 20 range and a plus 1.5 degree hipfire precision cone angle in addition to its other effects, making it easier to land follow-up crits with hipfire. And then we have Hawkeye Breach armaments. Deconstruct and Sundering felt like they should work against targets a little more like constructs or vehicles. So we have Hawkeye Breach armaments, Deconstruct and Sundering now work against Void Souls, Strand clones, Cabal projectile shields, and Brigs. Very interesting. Important to note the Brigs right there because Brigs are tough to take on. So interesting that they're adjusting those origin traits there. And then we have Hawkeye Breach armaments has one specific edge case that increases the complexity of the perk and is no longer needed, so we're reducing the number of different damage bonuses the perk has. So Hawkeye Breach armaments damage bonus for stasis crystals reduced from 85% to 60% to match other constructs. Interesting reduction there. As an origin trait, Sundering has a fairly high uptime in Warlord's Ruin because of the number of eye turrets. However, a perk themed around breaking stuff feels like it could be applied more broadly. So here we go. Sundering can now trigger on shield break in addition to final blows on vehicles and constructs. We added a small reload speed scaler while reducing the charge rate benefit to account for the higher uptime. Hatchling is a fun perk. And now they're going to make hatchling activation requirements are no longer locked to the archetype in terms of precision or non-precision kills. Instead, the perk will trigger with either a precision kill or 3 non-precision kills. Very nice. And then we have target lock. Now activates later in the magazine for SMGs at 20% instead of 12.5%. So the damage buff will swing primary weapon gunfights less often. So a nerf to target lock, which is probably very overdue. I know a lot of people are running SMGs with target locks on them right now in PvP. And then we have Envious Assassin. Each activation is now capped at 100% of magazine size instead of 150%, and the maximum overflow is now 3 times the magazine size instead of 4 times. Dang, that hurts. That hurts for a few rockets out there, like the Cold Assassin, I believe is what it's called, that stasis one. Maybe Assassin was really nice on that. And bait and switch reduced the damage bonus from 35% to 30%. You're really gonna nerf bait and switch, Bungie? Really? Come on, that is totally unnecessary. Super sad about that. Okay, no, not 1-2 punch, Bungie. Now correctly deactivates after dealing damage with a powered melee. Wow. So you could proc 1-2 punch and you could get off 2 melees before you had to re-proc it. So now they've nerfed it and made it so you're gonna shoot 1-2 punch, and after your first melee will deactivate it. So the new meta will be shoot 1-2 punch melee, 1-2 punch melee, 1-2 punch melee for Strand Titans at least. Keep that in mind. Deconstruct updated the perk description to correctly state that it pulls ammo from thin air, not reserves, and fixed a bug preventing the perk from triggering when shooting an enemy Titan barricade. Got it. Mods. Bonus damage against mini bosses should have been a part of boss spec, not major spec. We've updated these mods to correct that. Very interesting. So now boss spec will do extra damage to mini bosses. Good to know. The future. Okay, let's hear what we got for the future. We've pulled a lot of balance changes from the final shape of Destiny 2 into the light update 735, but we still have a number of small but exciting changes shipping into the light, touching content many players haven't thought about in several years. In the final shape, we're rebalancing weapon types in PvE, buffing underperforming weapons, and leaving the most high performers untouched. Since we're looking at PvE weapon tuning anyway, over the course of the year of the final shape, we'll be looking at weapon mods that feel mandatory, and we intend to make some changes that will increase player choice, particularly in PvE, while also making substantial changes to several of the least used exotic weapons, and adjusting some perks, making it more viable to use in slower firing weapons. Got it. Chill clip. Got it. And then you can also look forward to being able to enhance many more weapons. We'll be back with more information on weapon enhancement soon. Interesting. Be able to enhance more weapons. Maybe we can enhance non-craftable weapons. What? All right, Crucible Sandbox. Here we go. The PvP Strike Team. We're going to hear from them. Has a lot to talk about in coming weeks, including changes to PvP specific tuning for weapon types, exotic weapons, abilities, and special ammo generation. These changes are not applied to Mayhem, Momentum, and Checkmate. They retain their own custom modifiers. Checkmate has been retuned to be more representative of its original intended form, and there'll be more info on that from the PvP Strike Team next week. Our base Crucible Sandbox currently faces a number of issues we'll talk about here today, representing a large macro pass designed to begin to address several of these concerns. Really? And it will be followed by additional micro tuning in the future. Symptoms of these issues affect players across the skill spectrum from 2,000-hour veterans to new lights, so it's important that we begin to address them as best we can. Let's identify our goals with what the symptoms are in terms of how our gameplay is affected and how we can discuss root causes and the corresponding changes. All right, here we go. Help players to more clearly understand the sequence of events that led to their deaths so that they can more easily learn how to improve. Also, the weapon sandbox to account for increased average skill of our players by reducing the amount of high reward, low risk options, and encourage primary weapon mastery to be aspirational pursuit for players. Interesting. As we've increased the prevalence and strength of some sandbox elements, the ability to clearly understand what is happening from a target's perspective has suffered. It is increasingly common to be defeated instantly, and often so many different things are happening that it's nearly impossible to determine the sequence of events that killed you. Interesting. When a defeated opponent has difficulty recognizing and reacting to how they were defeated, it creates a situation where it feels like there was nothing they could have done, making it hard to learn what to do better next time. It also places a strong focus on being the one to deliver as many as these types of unreadable kills as possible, while utilizing build crafting to avoid becoming the recipient. Then sandbox elements that do not benefit either those paths fall out of favor. Additionally, while the average skill of our players has crept up over the years, the weapon sandbox has not grown alongside it. For example, a much higher percentage of players can hit the optimal time to kill with SMGs, peek shoot with hand cannons, or blint. Look it up with the Wish Ender today than several years ago. Blinting is just shooting someone in the body with a sniper and then swapping to a hand cannon. It's funny that it's still called Blint by this Bungie dev to this day. Blint is he's a content creator from D1. In large part, this is because a certain amount of forgiveness was baked into many primary weapons to allow more players to utilize them at their full potential. For example, high reward weapons like precision SMGs or aggressive hand cannons are only requiring 67% critical hits to achieve their optimal time to kill, and Wishender allowing you to follow up with a bow swap with a body shot from hand cannon. This leniency allows players to make mistakes and still benefit from the full strength of the playstyle. Holy, is Bungie about to go crazier and make us actually aim for the head? That made sense when the average player skill was lower, but in the current ecosystem, a far larger number of players can take advantage of those benefits. This is manifesting itself in multiple places, but it's most noticeable in the significant compression of the skill gap at high levels of play. An additional byproduct is an increase in difficulty for new players finding their footing in a game where many veteran players have near mastery of these existing playstyles, which increases the friction of refreshing pool of players in Crucible. Finally, at high levels of play like high body shot damage, generous aim assist, primary weapon flinch, and low critical hit requirements all contribute to the feeling that putting in the time to improve your skill with primary weapons is generally not worth the effort. With many meta primary weapons, hitting optimal or near optimal time to kill is less representative of mastery of the weapon and is instead merely an expectation of standard play. Simply at lower levels of play, players can still lose relatively quickly to an inaccurate opponent, which minimizes the time they have to figure out the sandbox to learn, often making them feel like they are playing higher skilled players than they really are. Interesting. These symptoms are all generated by a handful of root causes, and each generally linked to the others in a cycle of balance that encourages us to touch all of them at once if we're making some big sandbox changes or in smaller increments. All right, this is about to be absolutely insane. Sounds like it. They set up the craziest introduction to this. We have certain ability builds that are either higher uptime or higher potency that we believe is healthy. To help keep those builds in check, we provide a near constant availability of special ammo, which means there's always surplus of one-shot kill weapons in the field. And to keep primary weapons competitive, we have made primary weapons highly lethal, fast killing, and in general very forgiving. All that leads to a high percentage of deaths in our sandbox, where from the target's perspective, it feels like there was nothing they could have done differently. Simply put, we have risk versus reward problem. Over time, we pushed some of our sandbox elements to have higher rewards without offsetting them with the risk of punishing suboptimal play. Some elements take it a step further. Instead of just rewarding the attacker, they punish the target, e.g. the explosive payload, hand cannons, flinch, and wish under true sight. To begin to address these issues, the following changes will be applied to the Crucible starting with update 735 on March 5th. Player health. We have two goals with the following increase to player health. It gives us far more granularity to balance our current sandbox elements and lets us decrease the relative lethality of multiple sandbox elements all at once and universally. Wow, they're actually going to increase player health in Crucible? This is a crazy idea. This is going to increase the time to kill for the game. I don't know if that's the right direction to go. Player health will be increased by 30 HP in base Crucible, so players have 100 health, up from 70, and 116 to 130 shield, depending upon the player's resilience values. Wow, that's a wild change. I don't know if the community is going to be happy about that one. If I had to predict the future, they might end up reverting that one, because I get where they're trying to go with it, but I don't know. I don't know if that's the play. Here we go. Ability cooldowns. These values, combined with the changes to the mod economy earlier this season, will move to a place where ability uptime is healthier for the Crucible. Melee, grenade, and class ability cooldowns now have a 15% penalty applied to them in Crucible only. Super cooldowns now have a 20% penalty applied to them in Crucible only. Interesting. Ability damage. To account for the increased player health and reduce uptime, we have made some general changes to melee and super damage to make sure that we maintain moment-to-moment muscular memory and retain our current general rules of most supers killing in one shot and melees killing in two. Supers increased base super damage by 31%. Increased melee base damage by 16%. Grenades increased arc flux grenade damage by 16%. Primary weapon archetypes. All right, here we go. This is some crazy stuff right here, Bungie. They're going wild. To maintain the same optimal time to kill rates as the current sandbox with the new HP values, and to place an increased emphasis on precision, all primary weapons except bows will have their critical hit damage increased. We will also reduce the flinch dealt by hand cannons, as they were a consistent outlier even compared to other high damage primary weapons like scout rifles and bows. So pulse, auto, sidearm, and scout, 14% increase. Hand cannons, increase critical hit by 10%, reduce body shot damage by 5%, reduce flinch to players by projectile impact by 12.5%, and by explosive payload by 10%. Wow, this is a crazy sandbox change. This is going to be nuts. This is going to really change up the Crucible quite a bit. Submachine guns, 12.5% increased crit damage, body shot damage reduced by 3%, bows reduced base damage by 15%, special ammo acquisition. Wow, that is going to be very, with the plus 30% or 30 more HP added on top of all this, you're going to have to hit your headshots. You're going to have to hit those headshots. Special ammo acquisition. After a lengthy test period in Crucible Labs, we are ready to move the special ammo meter system to the wider Crucible. We have several changes between the initial version and this one, so here are the details and how it will work now. You will start every game with 2 kills worth of special ammo for your chosen weapon. Instead of 2 kills worth of special ammo being granted each time you respawn, you will earn more ammo by filling up a special ammo meter with points given for getting kills, assists, or completing objectives. Getting 100 points grants you 2 kills worth of special ammo for your chosen weapon. Wow. So you just have a meter now and you build it up by getting kills, assists, or capturing zones or whatever it may be. Base point values, very interesting. So they're reworking how you get special ammo in the game. So you'll spawn in with it initially, but then you're gonna have to earn it afterwards. Very interesting. So I've adjusted this for all these playlists here. Special weapon archetypes. Trace rifles, shotguns, and fusion rifles increase base damage by 20%. So they're going to be even more powerful, but the ammo is going to be less frequent. Glaives increased by 20%. Melee damage by 16%. Heavy weapon archetypes. All right, we've got reduced detonation damage by 5% on heavy GLs. Machine guns increase base damage by 20%. Okay, so they're trying to take the heavy GLs away from being the meta and maybe make machine guns the meta in PvP now. Very interesting. Very good changes there, I would say. I think that's good to adjust that, at least the power side of things. Exotic weapons. Fighting Lion, decreased damage by 20%. Devil's Ruin, decreased damage 15%. Crimson, reduced flinch 17%. Forerunner, increased damage versus players in Crucible by 20%. Symmetry, wow, increased revolution damage versus players in Crucible by 16%. Now that is a crazy meaty twab. Bungie doing some wild things. On top of that, we do have the Happy Lunar Year. You can use this code right here. Get this stuff. We've already covered this before. The Trials map this week is going to be Dead Cliffs. The Humble Bundle is out if you want to get some of these Destiny expansions for cheap. Link to that should be found on my Twitter if you're interested. The Artist of the Week. Wow. Those are some wild changes. The Crucible is about to be very different. It's good to mix things up, though, a little bit. I know some people will be upset, but it is good thing to mix things up. And the hardcore Crucible community will be excited because that should raise the skill ceiling where you have more health and precision hits are more important, which means that having good aim and having precise aim will win you more 1v1 engagements. So that is an overall good change. And the adjustments to the other stuff seemed fair as well. Should be a reduction in special ammo and the frequency of it, but it should still be very potent when you do have the ammo. And it'll kind of push people more into using their primary and hitting the headshots. So I'm not against any of those Crucible changes. I know that the Crucible community can be a bit fickle and they might not be happy about every little tiny minute detail, but I do think that it's good to mix. One, it's good to mix things up, and it's two, they're pushing things in a direction that I think that the hardcore Crucible community will like. The weapon sandbox changes seem pretty good. I'm looking forward to those going live and everything going on with the ability sandbox as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. What a crazy twab. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.